Senator Bernie Sanders brought the energy to Kalamazoo, Michigan this weekend. Bernie wasn't alone either. He was there alongside Abdul El-Sayed, the progressive Democratic candidate for U.S. Senate in Michigan, who gave Bernie a powerful introduction. Let's roll this clip.
My friends, Kalamazoo, let's bring up the OG himself, Senator Bernie Sanders.
Now here comes Senator Sanders taking the stage, and listen to how the crowd erupts for him.
The reason, no. What I want to do this evening, in addition to urging you to elect Abdul, is to beg of you in this unprecedented and difficult moment in American history to go outside of your comfort zone and to think outside of the box. If there was ever a time in the modern history of this country when the American people had to stand up and take on, and I'll give you some good news there. I've been all over this country. And what I can tell you, in rural areas and in urban areas, the American people will not tolerate oligarchy, will not tolerate authoritarianism, will not tolerate kleptocracy, and will not tolerate the continued war against the working class of this country. So what I want to do this evening is just talk a little bit about what you're not going to see on your corporately owned TV networks or in your corporately owned United States Congress. So let's talk about reality. Let's talk about what's going on in the lives of working people in Michigan, in Vermont, and all over this country.
This wasn't just a rally. This was a call to action. Bernie laid it out plain and simple. We are at a defining moment in American history, and if we don't stand up to oligarchy, authoritarianism, and the endless war on working people, then who will? He called out the truth that corporate media and corporate politicians don't want us to hear, that America is drowning in the worst wealth inequality in our history, that Elon Musk alone owns more wealth than over half of American households combined, that the top 1% are hoarding everything, while ordinary people are just trying to survive paycheck to paycheck. And Bernie is right. This isn't just an economic issue, it's a moral one.
And here is the truth. Not a pleasant truth, but it's a truth that the establishment does not want to be discussed, which is precisely why we have got to discuss it. In America today, we have more income and wealth inequality than we have ever had in the history of the United States of America. And it is an obscene level of inequality. And what I'm going to tell you, one of the things that the establishment does and what media does and what the culture that the oligarchs create does is they tell us what we should be outraged at and what we should accept or think it's not a big deal, right? Well, I happen to think that it is a very big deal, that it is a moral and economic outrage that one person in this country, Mr. Musk, owns more wealth than the bottom 52% of American households. That is an obscenity. That is not what this country is supposed to be about. But it's not just Mr. Musk. You got the top 1% owning more wealth than the bottom 93%. You got CEOs of large corporations making over 350 times what their workers are making. So, in other words, point number one, today, the 1%, the people on top, have never, ever had it so good. That's reality number one. Number two, it's not just that we're looking at massive income and wealth inequality. These guys have enormous economic power. Power. What does that mean? It means that in sector after sector of our economy, whether it is agriculture, whether it's financial services, whether it's transportation, you name it, a handful of giant corporations control that sector and determine the prices that you pay. And if you think one of the amazing things, you can go Google it, is that many of these large corporations that you're familiar with, whether it's Apple or General Motors or whatever it may be, they are themselves owned by entities larger than them. So you got a handful of gigantic Wall Street firms like Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street, that are the major stockholders in over 95% of American corporations. A handful of major Wall Street firms have enormous power over the economy. But it's not just, wait a minute, it's not just income and wealth inequality. It's not just concentration of ownership that they have. They also own what you see, hear, and read. You got 6 major international media conglomerates that control what 90% of the people see, hear, and read. And it's not just the traditional media, the ABC, CBS, etc. It is the internet as well. Look who owns Twitter, X, what used to be Twitter. That's Mr. Musk. Who owns Meta? That's Mr. Zuckerberg. Who owns the Washington Post? That is Mr. Bezos. And Mr. Ellison, one of the wealthiest people in the world right now, recently took over Paramount, which owns CBS. So these guys have enormous media power. And every day you are seeing their perspective. They are discussing the issues they think are important, not discussing the issues that may be important to your life. But it's not just income and wealth inequality, concentration of ownership, and the fact that they own the media. They also own a corrupt campaign finance system.
Then Bernie pivoted to healthcare, hammering home a message that resonates with progressives everywhere. Healthcare is a human right. In the wealthiest country on earth, how do we still have 85 million uninsured or underinsured? How are Americans going bankrupt from medical bills while big pharma posts record profits? And Bernie didn't stop there. He challenged America to think big again. Tuition-free college, affordable childcare, ending childhood poverty, things that every other wealthy nation has figured out, but that our political establishment tells us we can't afford. But, as Bernie said, we're not a poor country. We have the wealth. The only question is who controls it.
As part of his love of the oligarchy, Donald Trump and his Republican friends gave us the so-called Big, Beautiful Bill. In my view, that bill is the most dangerous piece of legislation passed in the modern history of the United States. It is a vulgar piece of legislation, and anyone who voted for that bill should not be returned to office. At a time of massive income and wealth inequality, that bill gave $1 trillion in tax breaks to the 1%, $900 billion in tax breaks for large, profitable corporations. Now that is vulgar, but what is even more vulgar is that in order to pay for those huge tax breaks, they cut Medicaid by $1 trillion and cut the Affordable Care Act, the result being that some 15 million Americans are going to lose the health care that they have, including hundreds of thousands right here in Michigan. So you got one reality, people on top, enormously powerful, doing extraordinarily well, controlling the political system, getting huge tax breaks. And then there is another reality. And that reality is that in the wealthiest nation in the history of the world today, 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. I grew up in a family that lived paycheck to paycheck. Many of you are in families living paycheck to paycheck. And what living paycheck to paycheck is about is every day undergoing the stress of wondering how you're going to feed your kids, pay the rent, go to the doctor if somebody gets sick, and wondering maybe, when you get old, will you be able to have a few bucks in the bank so you can enjoy some kind of security in your old age? And every single day, tens of millions of families are struggling with that stress and with that reality. And you know what that stress does to people? It kills them. Now, what you don't hear much about is that in America today, despite the fact that we are the wealthiest country on earth, our life expectancy, how long we live, is 4 years on average shorter than in other wealthy countries around the world. That is a shame. But I'll tell you what is even more shameful, and you don't know this because you never hear about it. If you are working class in this country, you will live 7 years shorter lives than the wealthy. In other words, the stress that the working class and lower income Americans are dealing with now, it's not just that they don't have a fancy house or a fancy car or they go out to big restaurants. Who cares? What is going on is that stress is actually killing people all across this country who are struggling to survive. And in the richest country on earth, that should not be happening. So our job, it seems to me, is to do what the American people want us to do. And that is to take on Trump every step of the way. When I make this over and over again, I hope I drum it into people's brains, is in this country, the richest country on earth, there is nothing that we cannot accomplish. Now, if we were sitting in a poor country, if you're in Haiti, in a poor country, and I would tell you all the things that I think should happen, people say, Bernie, we can't do it. We're a poor country. We are not a poor country. And it's time we started thinking big, not small. So when politicians come before you and they tell you all the things that we can't do, you tell them that, in fact, we can. And, in fact, many of the things I'm going to be talking about are being done all over the world. How many of you know that there is only one major country on earth that doesn't guarantee health care to all people as a human right? You're living in it. Now, think about it. In this country, we have so many brilliant people, so much wealth. How, in God's name, do we spend more than twice as much per capita on health care as the people in other countries, and yet 85 million are uninsured or underinsured?
And yes, Bernie also spoke on foreign policy, specifically calling out U.S. complicity in the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. He said plainly that our taxpayer dollars should not be funding the starvation of children. That's not controversial. That's basic humanity. And yet too many in Congress are choosing AIPAC's money over morality. The crowd in Kalamazoo knew it. You could feel it.
And this is one clear example where Washington, is way out of touch with where the American people are. This is clearly a moral issue. I mean, this would be a horror under any circumstances. Over 60,000 dead, 140,000 wounded, mostly elderly, women, children. 18,000 kids are killed. And now, starvation of children. It is criminal. Of course it's criminal. The issue here is not only that it is bad, we are paying for the starvation of children in Gaza. And I will tell you, this is not what the Democrats want, not what at the base. Now, I've gone all over the country, and the response I get is exactly what I am hearing from you. The American people do not want their taxpayer dollars going to starve or bomb children at schools. And as a result of grassroots activism, we are beginning to turn the tide. A few years ago, people proudly said, oh, I support AIPAC. AIPAC is funding me. People are not saying that anymore. You know why? Because AIPAC is, to a large degree, precisely behind the refusal of the Congress to act morally and responsibly. You take a hard look at any candidate who's taken AIPAC money, and you ask them whether or not they're going to stand with the children in Gaza or with big money interest here in the United States.
This wasn't just a rally. It was a reminder that progressive politics are about solidarity, about dignity, about building a government that finally works for working people instead of billionaires. And Bernie closed strong, throwing his support behind Abdul El-Sayed, reminding Michigan voters that this Senate race isn't just about one candidate.
All right, let me just conclude for the third time. This is my final and absolute conclusion. These are tough times for the country. At the very least, we need to elect strong members to Congress who have the guts to stand up for working people, stand up for decency, and are prepared to take on the oligarchy. Abdul El-Sayed is one of those people. Please send them to Washington. Thank you very much.
This Kalamazoo rally was proof that the fight against oligarchy isn't just alive, it's growing. And if Democrats want to win, not just in Michigan, but across the country, they need to embrace this energy instead of running from it.